Welcome back to the POW-Mister channel. In this video, we will walk you through the display screen operation of the POW-SPH-6KW solar inverter. On the main screen, you can tap the corresponding icons to view different data information, including PV data, grid data, battery data, load data, inverter data, and historical error records. If a generator is connected, a generator icon will appear below the inverter icon, allowing you to check the generator's operation data as well. At the top, you will find the date, time, and the current working mode, which in this example is SUV mode. Tap the setting icon in the top right corner to enter the settings menu. On the main settings page, there is a lock slider at the top left corner. Enable it activates password protection for the settings program, enhancing the system security. The default password is 123456. This page includes 7 settings sections and 1 historical error record section, covering 3 battery setup pages, work mode settings, time of use settings, grid settings, and basic settings. Let's start with battery settings 1. Here you can select the battery type, AGM, flooded lead-acid, user-defined, or lithium battery. The second column includes PACE and Pylon 485 communication options, which correspond to BMS communication protocols based on these two standards. In the battery control section, you will find several switches. The equalization enable switch, BMS fault protection switch, lithium battery activation switch, power saving mode, battery protocol, and BMS address. Note that the BMS equalization function only applies to flooded lead-acid batteries. If the BMS fault switch is turned on, the inverter will automatically shut down when a BMS fault occurs. When the lithium activation switch is enabled, the inverter can activate the lithium battery from the sleep or protection mode through PV or grid input. For the communication protocol, 00 corresponds to Pylon 485 protocol and 01 to the PACE 485 protocol. The inverter that physically connects to the battery for BMS communication must have its BMS address set to 1. If you choose the PACE 485 or Pylon 485 in battery type section, you don't need to set lithium protocol. Next, in the battery setting 2, you can set charging parameters such as constant voltage, float voltage, maximum charging current, grid charging current, maximum charging SOC, equalization voltage, equalization duration, equalization interval, and maximum discharge current. Moving on to the battery setting 3. This section defines discharge protection thresholds, including low voltage alarm, under voltage cutoff, recovery voltage, power saving cutoff voltage, and the related SOC limits. If EPS mode is enabled in battery settings 1, the corresponding thresholds here will take effect. When the battery voltage or SOC drops below this limit, the inverter will automatically disable the main output. Once the voltage rises by 2 volts or SOC increases by 10%, the inverter will resume normal power output. Whether the inverter uses voltage or SOC as the control reference depends on whether BMS communication is active. Now into the work mode settings page. Here you can configure the load supply priority, charging source priority, PV energy pattern, and the parallel operation settings. In work mode settings, SUV mode gives priority to PV power. When PV is insufficient, the grid will assist. The battery only supplies power when both PV and grid are unavailable. As PU mode prioritizes PV and battery power, the grid takes over only when the battery voltage is below the discharge cutoff. MKS mode follows SPU behavior when PV is available and SUV behavior when PV is unavailable. Self-use mode allows PV and battery to supply loads together. If both are insufficient, the grid steps in. For charging priority, PV then grids means PV is preferred for charging and the grid is used only when PV is unavailable. PV only means charging is done exclusively from PV. PV and grid allows both PV and grid to charge the battery simultaneously. PV energy pattern determines whether PV power is prioritized for charging or for load supply. In parallel settings, you can assign communication address for each inverter in the parallel system to distinguish master and slave units. For parallel mode settings, single means standalone operation. Parallel indicates single phase parallel. 3P phase A, B, C correspond to three-phase parallel operation, defining each inverter's phase. Next, the time of use page allows you to set up to 5 time periods and define whether each period uses grid charging or battery discharging. The basic settings page lets you set the system time, clear specific data, turn off the display screen, and enable or disable the buzzer. Next, go to the grid settings page. Here you can configure your country setting, output frequency, and output voltage. You can also enable or disable grid fit-in, set a fit-in power limit, choose whether to use an external CT, enable the GFCI check function, adjust the CT ratio, and configure zero output power settings. Finally, the historical arrow page records inverter phase events, including error codes, descriptions, and timestamps. That's all for the POW-SPH-6KW solar inverter display screen operation. We hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.